Hi everyone, welcome back to the Rayo Moon Oracle. I'm Rayo, and today we are continuing our Tarot Discovery series. We are moving on to the Hierophant, which is card number 5, number-wise, card number 6 that we've been doing so far. So 6 videos, we're chugging right along, and it's going super well. I'm super excited, actually. We're doing the Hierophant today. Following our Fool through their journey. So the Fool has met the mother and father energy of like the material world, right? That like physical reality. And now we are continuing on and into that like more formal education that you get. And this is what the Hierophant represents. So Hierophant is card number 5. And as per usual, we're going to look at the original Rider Waite imagery and then take a look at some of the other cards I pulled for us today from my other tarot decks. I have 4 for us today. Okay, let us get started with some keywords for the Hierophant. So keywords are spiritual wisdom, religious beliefs, conformity, tradition, institution, formal education, mentor, teacher, advice, ancestry, learning, tradition, and something like that practical knowledge, like applicable knowledge, right? Okay, and numerology, the number 5 is representative of adapting, changing, joy, creativity, kind of that process, right? So resourcefulness, adaptfulness, due to the change that comes from the number 5. Astrologically, our Hierophant is a Taurus energy. So with Taurus, that is ruled by the planet Venus, but there's also some Jupiter energy there because of what Jupiter oversees, which is more that like formal piece, that education, those traditions, a little bit of Saturn energy in that as well. And with it being Taurus, that comes with the element of Earth. It's a neutral card in terms of like yes and no. So if it shows up in a reading when you're asking a yes/no question, it's not going to give you a straight answer. It's just a neutral answer. So in our original Rider Waite imagery, our Hierophant is sitting on a chair in a big red robe again. We see red a lot in the original Rider Waite imagery as I've been talking through. I remember it with the Emperor. I remember it with... Who else had red on? Emperor was big. Magician. That's right. The Magician had red on. The Emperor had red on. And we see it again here with the Hierophant, with red kind of being that like strong passion, that power energy in terms of color symbolism. The Emperor is holding a staff that is the 3-tiered, kind of representative of the Trinity, because sometimes this card can be called the Pope. So there's definitely like that religious aspect coming in there. So we get the divinity, the Holy Trinity there. It can also be the conscious, subconscious, and superconscious in another type of reading. There are disciples at the Hierophant's feet, it kind of representing that formal education process, that learning process taking place. Keys are very strong imagery in it, so we see 2 keys crossing at the bottom of the Hierophant's chair, also representative of the mind. Let's see what else here. We see that 2 kind of finger raise again, which we saw with the Magician, in terms of like directing energy with the hands and the connection to divinity. So it also looks like, and with the Emperor sitting in the on that chair right there, it kind of looks like they're like in some type of cathedral. And in other imagery in the decks I've seen, there's definitely a lot more like religious imagery that comes in with this card. Okay, some other meanings and associations with the Hierophant card that I have written down here. So sometimes it can be kind of a counter to the High Priestess card a little bit. The countering energies for the Major Arcana differ. The Emperor and Empress are pretty obvious, but it's based on naming. Sometimes you'd think the High Priestess would be the counter with the Hierophant, but sometimes in other ways, in other descriptions, as you're looking through the journey, it could be the Magician, but just an interpretation to keep in mind. So some people see it as the counter to the High Priestess card. There's a hunger for knowledge there. Passing down knowledge, so that's where that like ancestry aspect comes in, that kind of like formal education piece, and those traditions, right? So that passing down of knowledge for tradition, it's usually going to be through more orthodox means though, with that more formality that comes with the Hierophant card. With the Hierophant card, with those like social structures, those orthodox approaches, we see the social structures, we see the social classes, we see those like very strict societal structures in place. With that formal education process, though, with those like traditions being passed down, that's when we also get those like ceremonies and ritual aspects. A person that is being represented by the Hierophant would be somebody who's like a mentor to you, a teacher, maybe a counselor, somebody that's passing down knowledge to you. So somebody, an older brother, older sister, maybe, that cool aunt that passes down different kind of knowledge, somebody that is that like formal like mentor to you in a lot of ways. As we get more back into like the religious aspects, like with this card being called like the Pope, sometimes we get that person could be like a monk, a priest, a father, the traditional like church father. So those that can also be somebody represented by the Hierophant card. So the Hierophant works as like the link between the humans and like a higher power, with that again connection to divinity and that kind of like education piece. And we get ancestry kind of tied in. One of the cards I'm going to show, did I bring it? Yeah. One of the cards I'm going to show is talks about that like ancestral knowledge, that generational knowledge that gets passed down through family. So it is also representative of like the genealogy of your family. Okay, let us take a peek at our cards for today. We'll throw them in a bit of different order here than I usually would do, but we'll start with a different card today for fun. So first card that I'm picking up right now is going to be the Ancestor from the Wildwood Tarot. So this one I think is interesting. This one is, the Wildwood Tarot has very different imagery and symbolism for the general tarot. This one I think is interesting because we get more of that like family genealogy traditional piece that comes out of the ancestor, right? So we see our ancestor here. We do not have a strong idea of who this ancestor is, male or female, any kind of sex or gender, due to the fact that there is antlers on the head. It's a stag head or some other kind of animal head, right? So we see them in the forest, which can be very representative of knowledge as well, because there are many things hidden in the forest. There is a depth and a mystery that can be in the forest. Our ancestor here is holding a drum that has the 3 spiral. I'm not sure what it's called. I've always had a hard time with trying to figure out what that is called, but just that three spiral again, that is taking kind of place of the 3-tier scepter or staff. That is what the original Hierophant and the Rider Waite imagery shows, but that we get that 3-tier again and stuff, which is that again, that divinity, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, can be mother, father, child, anything with those kind of like 3s, that again, conscious, superconscious, subconscious aspect. And our ancestor here is beating on this drum, right, representative of that higher knowledge, that divinity, and making sound and bringing more information out of it, right? So when you play a drum, it can be very spiritual and meditative, and the creation of music is also very spiritual sometimes as well, right? Depending on how we're feeling and what you're trying to do, it's that a big creativity aspect. So accessing that knowledge through the drumming process and being out in nature, which is also another very spiritual aspect of the ancestor in terms of the Hierophant in this card, and specifically. We see a kind of crescent moon in the back, which is also representative of spirituality, spiritual energy, that connection to the divine. It looks like it is sunset, so that is kind of, or twilight, so that's also that like in between time, not day, not night. It's representative of just being kind of neutral and just all knowledge, right? It's not the negative or positive in term, not like bad, positive or negative, but it's not this knowledge or that knowledge. It's kind of all knowledge. It's living in that in-between state. Very different Hierophant card than you'll see in a lot of decks, honestly. This is a very different one, and I like the difference here. I like the fact that it is the ancestor, because I think that is very representative of culture and knowledge that lives in those cultural pieces, in the types of food we eat and the types of ways the family is structured, in our music, in our dress. All those pieces come down through our ancestral lines, which is tied very heavily into culture. And we have all these subconscious learnings that get passed down generationally without realizing it. So I think it's very interesting and important that the Hierophant card is called the Ancestor card, and to just acknowledge that piece. Yeah, so let's move on to the next Hierophant card. The one I have right here is from the Wild Unknown, our Hierophant here. So this Hierophant is a crow. Crows and ravens, the corvids species, are very, very smart birds. Really, really smart. They are often very representative of psychic energy. And also, again, that connection to the mind and the conscious, subconscious, superconscious, those other aspects to life, to thinking and creating and interacting with the world. So our bird here is holding a key. The key imagery is very, very strong in the Hierophant card. The key representing the unlocking of the mind. That, again, that formal education piece, that education. So where you learn things and you grow and you develop and learn more things and learn how to learn more about the world. You learn how to learn, which I think is an interesting aspect as well. So the key here, the Hierophant, the crow, is holding the key, representing that ability to unlock that knowledge, to have access to that knowledge. And I think there's this lightning in the background on the Hierophant card here for the Wild Unknown, and I think that to me also represents that like divinity piece a little bit, for just that like the power and nature aspect that comes out from a lightning strike, right? That flash of an eye, that so much power, so much light in one go. So I don't think there's something, at least how I'm thinking right now, there's nothing I can see that's like a direct counter, direct representation for what the lightning represents in the original Rider Waite imagery, but it feels part of that power and knowledge to me. It feels like, okay, hey, you learn things, you have more power because of it. Power, knowledge is power, and you get that more and more as you progress further, as you learn more, and it's coming really, really close to the key here. It's like so close to touching this key right here, and that unlocking of the mind. But yeah, that's our Hierophant in the Wild Unknown. Okay, now we have our Hierophant from the Light Seers Tarot. This Hierophant feels pretty different. The Hierophants in the other two cards, the Ancestor definitely feels very formal and a little intimidating. The Crow in the Wild Unknown feels... I feel that power coming out of it too, for that like lightning behind that crow. This Hierophant, he's having fun though. He's laughing, he's smiling. We see that three-tiered scepter staff on the shirt that he's wearing. We see a stairway behind him, again representing that, and as it's going up towards the heavens, right, representing that connection to the heavens, to divinity, to higher knowledge. And we see at the end of the staircase there at the very top, or at least what it's going into, is that like flower. So that flower of life imagery, again, that higher knowledge. Something I just noticed as I was looking further at this card, I think the Light Seer Tarot does this to me pretty often, where once I look much closer at the card, I see something I hadn't seen before. And as we get kind of like this top left bit of the card here in the pink coloring, there are different symbols. We see the symbol of Christianity with the fish. There's a pentagram in there. I see that three-tier. I have to look up what that three-tier spiral is. I don't know the name of it. If anybody knows the name, please comment down below. I'd love that if you could help me out with that. But we see different symbols from different religions coming out of that like white flower there, representative of more knowledge, different knowledge that this Hierophant has access to. This Hierophant, in comparison to other ones, is very dressed down too. The Hierophant in the Rider Waite imagery looks very formal with all the robes and the staff and the shoes and the crown, everything adding to this power that the Hierophant holds through the look, the representation through the clothing, right? This Hierophant, by comparison, is very dressed down. It's just wearing the shirt, looks like wearing some yoga pants potentially, and is barefoot, not wearing very much at all. But there is still access to knowledge there, and this is somebody, you think somebody like a guru, shaman, a different kind of mentor and teacher that also has that connection to spirituality and religion, maybe certain religions. So it is the equivalent of like a pope, a father, a priest, but looks and presents very, very differently. But that knowledge is still knowledge, right? Knowledge is still power, and it does not matter how you look if you still have the same knowledge, right? Somebody who looks like our formal Rider Waite priest, right, in comparison to the Light Seers tarot priests, I bet that they have the same amount of knowledge, but they present very differently, and somebody's going to interact with them in different manners based on how they are presenting themselves to the world. But somebody, this is my personal opinion, somebody who has power does not need to show they have it. They don't have to brag that they have the power, right? They do not have to brag that they have the knowledge. It just, they show it, that it comes naturally. They don't have to do more for it. And that almost shows the humbleness also is its own kind of strength, right? There is definitely room and means for a Rider Waite there's definitely room and means for a Rider Waite Hierophant, right? Because some people need that structure, more solid structure like this, right? And that is what the Hierophant represents, that more formality, because that is how the culture is built. That is how their brain processes things. Those can all exist at once. But it's a very interesting difference between the two Hierophants, showing the difference in their education and formalities and structures. But that's why I like to do these too, to kind of do this compare and contrast, because they are two very different Hierophants, but they are representative of the same energy. If I'm pulling this Hierophant, I would definitely think of somebody a little bit more loose structurally than a Rider Waite Hierophant by comparison. So let us move on to our last Hierophant, which is Santauerte. One of my favorite ones. This is one of my favorite decks. Sorry, it's going to pop out a lot because the imagery is just so different. But our Hierophant here in the Santauerte, he's not wearing a lot either, so he's more comparable to the Light Seers tarot, but they're not wearing as much clothing. I think the interesting connection to divinity in this case is going to be the Ouija board that the Hierophant is using. So we see the same, that two fingers rising, showing again that connection to divinity, that power, that channeling of energy through the hands. But the communication piece with divine could be talked about through the Ouija board potentially here instead. Something that is different that we see, the disciples are representative underneath the Hierophants through kind of the table skeletons in front of the Hierophant right here. It looks like they're the ones holding up the table, holding up that knowledge, holding up that power structure. And it's just an interesting comparison for the fact that we have in the original Rider Waite imagery, we have those two disciples and we have these two skeletons, and both are lower than our Hierophant and holding up that structure either way, right? So for the original Rider Waite imagery, the Hierophant is passing down that knowledge, passing down that structure, passing down that formality and those orthodox approaches. In this case, for the Santauerte Hierophant, they are literally holding up the table that the Hierophant is using to communicate with, that has the Ouija board on it. I picked this Hierophant specifically because I really loved the colors in this one. It's very, very strong colors. So I love the blues in here, and I love purple's my favorite color. As you see, my purple chair here, and I'm wearing purple currently. But purple in terms of the chakras and in color symbology, that is a very divine color, a very spiritual color. So purple for in long time ago, years past, in 17, 18, whatever, how far back you want to go. Purple was a very rare and hard color to get, so it was often a symbol of royalty and that divinity, because often the kings and queens were like were given their station by quote unquote God, right? Where they were divinely guided to be the kings and queens of their lands. So that purple color came to represent that royalty and also that divinity at the same time. With the chakras, it's either going to be kind of like your third eye, depending on the colors and which kind of one you go by, or it's your crown chakra. Because this can be indigo and this is purple, or this is purple and this is white, usually for your third eye and crown. But either way, that's that connection to spirituality, that wisdom, that psychic energy. And we see a lot of that coloring here underneath the Hierophant. He's kind of sitting in all these purple, like pink flowers. It looks gorgeous picture, very gorgeous picture. But yeah, I think that'll do it for this Hierophant. Gorgeous card, like even just like from back here, right, like the coloring pops off of this card, and it's just a really pretty card to look at and feels very special in that regard. And that's kind of why I wanted to pull. We had some very different Hierophants this time around, which I think is very cool. The symbology, the imagery, very different than the previous videos we've had, where there's just lots of similar aspects, right? These were very different pieces, and that's kind of why I wanted to do these series too, is just to really take a good in-depth look at everything, all these cards, and see how they differed, see how they were similar, because you're going to get the same thing, you're going to get similar energies, but the way it can be interpreted can vary widely based on the tarot deck you're using. Okay, so let us get into our reversals now. Okay, so super quick, reversals, one of two ways that I've heard of reading them. Too much energy, not enough energy. Too much Hierophant energy, not enough Hierophant energy. In the realm of too much Hierophant energy, we're going to get corruption, hypocrisy. The person can end up fanatical. We can get that like fake wokeness again, where somebody like knows those things, but they don't know how to act on those, the information they have. We get conformity to a bad extent. Not all conformity is bad, or like working within your societal constructs and confines, but sometimes it can go too far, right? And that's when we get that conformity. Let's see. We can end up with conflict with authority. We can feel restricted and restrained. I thought of like red tape in like a career context, right? If the Hierophant shows up and it feels like an overabundance of that energy, there's a lot of red tape to go through. So again, that ties into that like governmental aspect to those orthodox means, those social constructs. We can be clinging to the old ways too much, right? So tradition is well and good, but sometimes things need to change, right? And that is part of progress and growing, and also interesting for why the Hierophant, in my opinion, is card number 5 too, which is the number of adapting and changing. So while we can follow tradition, sometimes you need to take a look at it and see if it is still beneficial and why we've done it that way, and maybe why we need to move on from it. So yeah, so we can be clinging to the old ways, we can have oppression, superiority. Okay. So if we have too little Hierophant energy, we can have a lack of moral, ethical, and spiritual guidance. So we didn't have that formal education process. We were not a part or super in depth into our society and don't know right from wrong as easily. We could have abandoned our faith, so that faith in that formal higher education process, or those religious aspects to it. So those churches, believing in that higher power, that divinity, so that abandon of faith or a loss of faith. So maybe we haven't like lost our faith, but maybe we're just blindly following. We haven't thought through and processed and are in the places we are because we thought about it and figured it out and questioned things. We're just blindly following and not moving forward of our own volition, own regard. With that, maybe there comes ignorance as well, and those are all representative of a reverse hierophant with not enough hierophant energy in it coming up in reverse, right? One little piece that I forgot for maybe too much hierophant, or just a reason why it might end up reverse, is maybe you need to follow your own path, right? Maybe you don't need to be in the confines of the structure and those orthodox methods anymore. Maybe you need to go out on your own and develop your own path in your own way. Move away from tradition, move away from the formalities and the formal education, and just make your own way in the world. And I think that's a good piece to leave the Hierophant on in reverse. Follow your own path. Maybe it's time. Okay. So everyone, that is all I have today for the Hierophant. I don't know. I think I've settled into these videos a bit more now, and I have figured out how I'm starting to feel about all the cards and figure out how I want to talk about them and how I'm interpreting all the meanings that they are presenting to me. So it's been kind of a fun discovery process for me going to, and that is why this series is aptly named the Tarot Discovery Series. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. Please give a like, comment down below. Please subscribe if you did enjoy the video and enjoy this content I provided for you. If anybody remembers what that what that three-tiered spiral is called, please let me know. That'd be very helpful as well. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.